couple things I want to share with you guys today. Let's talk about a couple riders, Let's talk about a couple riders. So I'm going to talk about Tomac, a little bit of Cooper Webb, a little bit of Plessinger, and a little bit of Musquin. Hopefully nobody takes offense of it. It's just what is out there, what you're seeing, and you only can improve by sometimes people seeing things that are holding you back. So anyways, that and a technique tip. So anyways, Tomac. Well, of course, everybody knows that the starts are Tomac's a little bit of his weakness. And sometimes when we overthink things, we make things a little bit more difficult. So sometimes I think maybe he's just overthinking it because everybody knows how to start, right? But why is he so fast sometimes and not? I feel it's all in the technique. I feel it's from his hips to his shoulders. I've talked to him many times about it. And again, when you see him ride a little bit more hunch, a little bit more this, you see a little bit more notchiness to his riding, a little bit more mistakes, a little bit more, not as much speed. His technique isn't allowing his speed. His technique isn't allowing his fitness. His technique isn't allowing him allowing the ability that he has to override the motorcycle compared to most. So he has this little bit of rounding, a little bit of tucking, so it's more into his arms. So the speed that he goes, when you're putting weight into your arms, you're going to be notchy and you're not going to have a flow with it. When you watched him, when he's just so dominant, and even this weekend in Daytona, boom, his hips were out, his back was more straight, he was off the back of the bike a little bit more, his body was stretched out, his body was able to move more instead of being hunched up and not moving. Again, if everything on the motorcycle has to move to his true potential, everything on the body has to move to his true potential. So when Eli lengthens out on the motorcycle, his hips come out, his back becomes more straight, is when he rides to that potential that we see why he's won 5 Daytona Supercrosses, right? Let's go Plessinger. Last year, I just feel like he was a little bit sloppy. His feet were kind of sticking out, his elbows were down, butt was tucked, back was rounded. So every time he came into a corner, the front end would tuck because his back was rounded. Every time he was coming out of the corner, the back end would come around because his butt was tucked. You get what I'm saying? It's a transition to 450s, because in 250s you can kind of be a little bit lazy, and not that he's lazy, just when you're big and lengthy like that, you can get away with maybe a little bit of incorrect technique. But now the 450, you have to make sure that you have, precise technique. Doesn't matter how big or small or strong or weak you are. Okay, so this weekend you saw him more with his feet, more with his back straight, more hips. He wasn't moving all over the bike. He was moving on top of the motorcycle because his body, to me, looked a lot more solid because of the position that he was in. All right, now let's look at Cooper Webb. Again, who was the strongest at the end of the race? Cooper Webb, he's always passing somebody at the end. So to me, 10% more efficiency, because he's able to do this where everybody else is doing this. And if I have to do this and counterbalance a little bit, I have to tighten up. I don't care what you say. This, I have to tighten up a little bit. So every time I've tightened up 1,000 times over that 20-minute session, maybe that's 10%. 10% more efficiency. Hey, the results show, okay? Okay, so now let's talk about Musquin. With Musquin, you see, his technique hasn't changed over many years, okay? His technique is the same. It's flat-footed. His knees are in front of his shoulders. His upper body's back like this. Okay, you can see it when Roczen passed him through the whoops at Daytona. You can see it's so obvious of how position on the motorcycle is so much more important than setup on the motorcycle. Everybody is so obsessed about this setup of the motorcycle. No, it's technique. Look at Roczen through the whoops compared to Musquin, only technique-wise. Okay, the bikes are the same. Roczen came in there, toes, hips, boom. This position here, in the strongest, most stable, most coordinated, most efficient position you can be in. Every joint's moving, core is stabilizing. Musquin came in flat-footed, knees in front of his shoulders, upper body in the back of the bike, and you saw the difference, the speed-wise, when they went through the whoops, okay? Because, again, his feet, his ankles aren't moving, his hips aren't moving, his shoulders aren't moving, his elbows aren't moving, because he's always trying to play catch-up with a motorcycle. Is he a great rider? Yes. Can he win again? Yes. Is he going to be good? Yes. But as you can't deny, the results have gone down a little bit. And when I went and talked to Eli last year in Colorado during the Nationals. He's like, we're talking about Dungey. He's like, man, Dungey has to be very careful if he wants to come back, because the riders, the speed has gotten so much faster. And I don't believe it's gotten faster because technology or training, the technique, because this is the first era pretty much that motocross has really focused on technique. I feel that I have brought this into the sport, this technique that everybody's using, and put a big emphasis on it. And when you emphasize the most important part of riding a motorcycle, and that's how you ride it, well, you're going to get more gains out of it than just trying to make the machine better or the heart rate better or their muscles better. Okay? It doesn't matter any of that if you don't ride the motorcycle correctly. So efficiency, technique, and approach is so much more important than any type of technology or fitness. Okay? So one last thing. I know this is a long one, but you know me, I like to talk. I was watching the Daytona Supercross amateur today, and they're talking about the new technique of riders not putting their foot out long, keeping it out long, and saying it's more with the bikes and more with the bikes. Yeah, the bikes have gotten better, but it's not all the bikes, because I can do the same thing on a two-stroke 125, 250, 500, old bike, new bike. It doesn't matter. It's a technique that I have brought out to the sport. And they're talking about Eli. When I was training Eli, we worked on that about, hey, when you're in the corner and you get your foot back out, right when you let this clutch out, get on the gas, that foot needs to come back on. Because as soon as I get my foot back on, that's going to allow me to have more control. The more control I have, the more aggressive I can be. The more aggressive I want to be, the more control I have. But how do I control the rear end coming out of a corner? Well, that's by my feet, not by my hands, as you can see. Okay, so you're coming in the corner, boom, 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 hips out tight, arms loose. Right when I sit down, my foot's out. Right when I let that clutch out and get the gas on, my foot's coming back on, my hips are coming back out, I'm squeezing with my ankles, and that's why I can make a corner come out and be aggressive, clean, and straight, because it's the fastest point from point A to point B is a straight line. So if you're making all these wigglies coming out of corners, well, you just made your track longer, so to speak. So again, yes, the bikes have gotten better, but everybody, damn it, get away from it being a technology sport or a fitness sport. It's efficiency. These athletes are amazing. They're fucking dancers on these motorcycles. So let's applaud that. Even let's talk about Barsha, okay? Barsha, everybody wants to say gas, 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 gas. I mean KTM, 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 sorry. That's the bike. Yes, that bike might suit him better, okay? But he won on a Honda, won on a Yamaha. What I see is that his taking off the brace now is allowing his aggressive style, his speed to be there more consistently and not have a block in a technique or be affected by something that's locking him up and pushing his head in places it doesn't want to be. Well, that's going to lead into mistakes. That leads going to lead into crashes. You get what I'm saying? So if you take off something that is causing you to have inefficiency when you're trying to ride at your fastest, well, you're going to be more consistent. Again, guys, this is all logical thinking stuff. It's not something I'm pulling out my ass or pulling from the stars. It's logical thinking. And that's what happens when people go about things with fear or go about things with ego or go about things with trying to make money from you guys, is they put all this fluff and duff and shit on it. I don't. I'm coming to you guys with logical thinking. It's not putting anybody down. It's only teaching anybody that's following me. So hopefully you got something out of that, and keep following. Peace.